All right, we're in chapter 7 of Zach's Programming with Visual Basic, and I'm working on exercise 14, which is one of the more advanced exercises that we have here. Rembrandt Auto-Mart. So every salesperson has an ID that consists of 5 characters. The first 3 are numbers, the fourth is a letter, and the fifth is a letter. Create a Windows Form application for Rembrandt project and solution. Create this interface. All right, let's get started, right? Because we have enough to do already. So I'm gonna create a new project. I have a Windows Form app and the .NET framework in Visual Basic. So by now, this should be in your recent project templates, right? Just make sure that you have Windows Form app, .NET framework, Visual Basic. We're putting the project and solution in the same directory because this solution only has one project, so we can save some room that way. All right, so I need to create this form. So I have a group here. I've got 8 labels down here. I've got a couple labels up here with some text inputs, a couple buttons here. So I'm going to move this to my other screen and quietly get building. All right, I think that's pretty good for my form design. And I've already calculated or coded the exit button. So let's think what we're going to do here when somebody hits calculate. So when somebody hits calculate, we need to start with probably verify the, what do we call this, employee ID, right? And that is written like this. I'm just going to take this and copy from here. A lot, okay. So this whole thing is just for the employee ID. So once we do this, we need to I guess maybe even before that, we just get the number sold, because there's a lot we can do there, right? If it has to be greater than 0 in order for us to even continue. So if not greater than 0, show error message. All right, and there's a couple different ways we're going to do this, but we'll get to that in a moment. So then we're going to verify the user ID and then increment the proper counters. All right, there's going to be 2 counters because every employee is either sells new or used cars and is full or part-time. So it could be like new full-time, new part-time, used full-time, used part-time. So yeah, let's make some counters. Let's make them, so I'm going to say static int cars sold full-time as integer. All right, we're going to start this at 0. So static means it's going to retain its value every time I run this sub procedure, but it's still not accessible outside of this sub procedure. So I hope I'm doing this right by making this static. And then I also need part-time, cars sold part-time, and then I have cars sold new. So let's make this actually say int new cars sold and then used cars sold. So some variables there. Okay. So let's get the number sold. I'm going to say dim int number sold as integer, and then integer dot try parse, and I'm going to try to take txt number sold dot text and put it into int number sold. All right, so I'm going to try to do this, and then if int number sold is not greater than 0, so less than or equal to 0, then we're going to show an error message. So message box dot show, and I'm going to say please enter number sold greater than 0. And this is an input error. This is the title of my message box. And while we're at it, I'm going to do message box buttons. The only thing you can say is OK to this error message. And message box icon, it's an error. All right, and once this is done, we're going to exit sub. Right? Don't run the rest of this sub procedure if number sold is less than or equal to 0. So let's try this out. I'm going to say number sold is Harper. I calculate, please enter number sold greater than 0. Even if I said 0, it gives me that error. If I said negative 34, it gives me that error. If I said 34, it's fine. Okay? So this is one way you can check this out. We could also say integer.tryparse returns true if it was successful or false if it was not successful. All right. So, when I run this on negative 34, it would still return true. But if I run it on my dog's name, this will return false. So actually, this takes care of both things, but we could put this in an if statement. All right, I could actually say, if not integer.tryparse, or else number sold is less than or equal to 0. All right, so if this fails, or the number you entered is less than or equal to 0. So here I'm going to put in Harper. It failed because that first bit failed. But again, negative 34 is still an integer. So we're checking to make sure that that worked. So let's start testing our try parses. All right. So we got the number of sold, and now we're going to verify the user ID. So the first 3 characters are numbers. All right, we have all this stuff going on. I'm going to say if txtid.text. I'm just trying to try this out. I don't know if it's going to work. Is not like number, and I think so this worked. TXT text like this, but I want to see if it's not like this. Oh, let's put the not here. Okay, so let's look at like. All right, so I put my not here. Basically, what I'm looking for is txt.text like 3 numbers. All right, but I really want to do a little bit more with that because those 3 numbers, they should not appear in the middle. They have to be the first 3. So let's see what we can do here. We can, oh, look, and then we can do any digit, and then we have a character list. And this is any character not in a character list. So let's, in the character list, the next 4th character is NU, N or U, and the last one is FP. So if this fails, we're also going to show an error message and say, please enter a valid ID. All right, I'm not going to explain what a valid ID is, but now let's test this out. So if I put in 716 AB, oh, and it did our first check first. So number sold 45. Please enter a valid ID. That doesn't work because AB doesn't work. But NP, that should work. Yep, that's good. But NP like that doesn't work. All right, so let's take the user input and force it to capitalization first. So I'm going to do, actually, I can just take this right here to upper. All right, so now we're verifying that the input is true. And now we have to figure out what counters we're going to increment. So I'm going to say if txt, and you know what, I'm converting this to upper so many times, it's just going to make sense to make a variable for it. So dim str id as string is equal to this. We're going to be using strid a few times. Okay, so if strid, if the character in spot, let's see, number is 0, 1, 2. So this is spot 0, 1, 2. This is spot 3. So if that toString is equal to an n, then we want to take new cars sold, add to it the number of cars sold, which was what? Number sold. So look at spot 4, determine if new or used car sold. So this is a little, I'm wondering why I was getting confused here. The 4th character is new or used cars, but if we look at the assignment here, though, that's actually put down here. right? So I was thinking this was 4 and this was 5. No, this is 4 and this is 5. So our interface doesn't align with our the order of the employee ID, but that's okay. So we could say else here, right? And just assume that it's used, but I don't like assuming. All right, so I'm going to do an else if, and then put all this stuff in here again. Only now we're looking for used. And this else, I don't think it's even possible to get here. All right, and I'm just going to I'll put an error message in there. Say something went wrong. We can put, so I showed my class this, but if you're watching on YouTube, if you hit Windows semicolon, this is not related to VB at all, but it brings up your emoji keyboard, right? So we can be like, oh, something went wrong. I don't know. Right? This should never happen. We should never get to that spot. So, because remember, up here, we already tested that this spot is NU. So we have the NU here. But let's say that you get a call from this Rembrandt Auto-Mart and they say, hey, we have another customer type, and the fourth character can also be a C. And you go, okay, NCU, like that. And you forget to add the code down here, then this would trigger. All right. So anyhow, so we did that, and I'm going to take this entire section, copy it, and paste it, and then say, look at spot 5, determine if full or part-time employee. So if it's F, we want int car sold full-time. If it's P, then int car sold part-time. And then, yeah, something went wrong again. So all we did was we incremented our counters, which are static variables. So once we hit this end sub, variables like int number sold, which was declared with a dim, is destroyed, right? And same with dim str. That memory space is let go. But because we said these are static variables, these retain their value. They stay in memory space. So the last thing we need to do is update the labels. So I can say LBL full-time dot text is equal to int car sold full-time dot toString, and this is a number with no decimal places because it's an integer. And do that a couple more times. We did full-time, part-time, and then we're going to do new car and used. All right, let's check this out. So we really don't care what the first 3 numbers are, as long as they're numbers. And then we have either new car or used car. So UF, and they sold 17 cars. Uh-oh, something went wrong. Funny, I didn't even think I was supposed to be able to get there. All right, so that something went wrong didn't help me because I have 2 of them. So let's figure out which one it is. I'm just going to add a little bit more help text in here. Try this again. All right, so 1, 2, 3, NP, NF, sorry, sold 34. All right, so full-time, part-time, something went wrong. Full-time, part-time. What went wrong? Do I have this wrong? This is... Oh yeah, I went the wrong way. I didn't increment this bit here, so these should be 4s. Right, this is looking at that last string. Okay, try this one more time. Okay, there we go. So we added 34 to new full-time, If I do used full-time and they sold 3 cars, used went up by 3, full-time went up. If I do part-time and they sold 13 cars, this is used part-time. Used should go up and part-time should be 13, used should be 16. All right, I think this is working very nicely. It looks good. The only thing I didn't like was that when my form first loaded, all of these said label. I don't know if you noticed that. So I'm going to take these labels, make them empty. All right, I think that's a pretty good application. Let me just double check from the assignment, make sure that we have everything here. Assignment should allow the sales manager to enter the ID and the number of cars sold for as many salespeople as needed, which that's working because we use static variables. Display the number of cars sold by each of the following categories. We did that. Code the application. That's it. So, maybe the only thing I would do is once you, put in that this employee sold something, do we clear these out? I don't know. I suppose we could, but then you don't have any type of confirmation, but we don't really need to do that. So I think our application is all set. So the keys to your successful application here is static variables. So we retain the value between runs. We're making sure that the number that were sold was greater than 0, right? And if it was less than or equal to 0, or you put in like my dog's name, it shows an error message. We took the employee ID, we made it uppercase, and then we did this pattern matching. So we were looking for number, N or U, F or P. And if that didn't match, we showed an error message. And there's definitely other ways you can do this, but this is by far the most elegant solution for that. And then we had to update the counters. So we're looking at spot 4, which is index 3. And that's either N or U for new or used cars. And then in spot 5, which is index 4, we're looking for full or part-time employees. And then we update all those labels with the numbers. So there you have it. This was Rembrandt Auto-Mart.